Hey everyone, the Saxophone Oracle here, and this week I'd like to share with you the results of a not so scientific experiment I did this past summer with synthetic reeds. Now some of you may remember about a year ago I did a video about reeds, and I thought it was quite interesting. What I did was I demonstrated the differences between every reed strength available on the market, so from number 1 all the way to number 5. And in that video I give my general thoughts and impressions about reeds, and I mentioned how much I'd always wanted to be able to make synthetic reeds work for me, but was never able to. So this summer, I decided to go down that rabbit hole once again in a desperate attempt to convert myself to synthetic reeds. And what I wanted to do is share with you all the things I learned along the way. I've tried so many different plastic reeds in the past, going back over 20 years. And in my opinion, they just were never any good. But recently I've noticed there have been some huge advertising campaigns by some of the synthetic reed companies, and I've noticed that lots and lots of amateur players in the forums tend to swear by these reeds, so I thought it was a good time to give them another try. So over the course of 3 weeks this summer, I played nothing but synthetic reeds. I put away the cane completely, and I gave a serious effort in making the switch, and I tried 2 very popular brands. I tried this one here that kind of pretends to make itself look like it's an actual cane reed, and I tried this brand here that has absolutely no shame in admitting what it is. It's nothing more than a hunk of plastic. I have to start out by saying just how impressed I am with how far these synthetic reeds have come. I think the technology has come a long, long way, and it's quite impressive. So what I'm going to do is I'll start by giving you the impressions I have of each of the brands I tried, and then I'll tell you what I think I've learned in general about synthetic reeds over the course of this 3-week experiment, and I'll reveal to you whether or not I finally made the switch to synthetics. Starting with the brand that is colored to look like a real reed. And we'll start with the positives. Number 1, I do like the look of these. I appreciate that they try to look like an actual reed. You look closely at it, it's got these fake fiber kind of look to it, and I like that, because the ones that are clear plastic, I don't like to look into my mouthpiece and see bits and pieces of a ham sandwich or whatever I was eating. I find that disgusting and gross, and I don't need it. So the look is really cool. The second thing, though, is that of all the synthetic reeds I've tried over the years, I have to say this one sounds the most like a real cane reed to me, and I think that's a very cool achievement. And now for the less positive things. So even though this reed has those fake cane fibers painted on that I was talking about, the texture itself is really very smooth on the lips. It's almost like a piece of glass. And for me, I find that really difficult to adjust to because it doesn't feel stable in my mouth. I don't feel anchored at all while I'm playing this reed. Number 2, even though this reed sounds the most like a cane reed, unfortunately, it really doesn't respond like a cane reed at all. The response is actually quite poor, and I was surprised about that. There's very little flexibility, there's very little subtleties that you can get from this reed. There seems to be one sweet spot where you have to blow, and you can't really take in more or less mouthpiece or put any kind of uneven pressure on this reed. Now, for a beginner, that might be an okay thing because it'll force you to have a sort of stable and consistent embouchure placement. But for anyone who's beyond an absolute beginner, I find it really annoying and quite frankly, borderline unacceptable. Number 3, the strengths available in this brand are actually quite limited, and they have no exchange policy. So if you happen to buy a reed that's a little bit too soft or a little bit too hard, well, you're out of luck, Give us another $30 or $40 and you can have another reed to try. And in my case, it cost me well over $100 until I could find a reed that was reasonable enough to work with in terms of strength. Number 4, within an hour of playing this reed, it actually cut through my lips, and that is unacceptable. It doesn't feel particularly sharp, but you can feel it and see, yeah, that's sharp. And when it's vibrating on your lips, yeah, it broke the skin. I bled, and I even gave it a second shot. I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I waited for my lips to heal, and then I went for it again, and wouldn't you know it, the same thing happened. So needless to say, for this synthetic reed, even though it sounded quite good, I did not make the switch. And now for the clear brand, and again, I'll start with the positives. So first of all, this reed is very comfortable. It felt comfortable in the mouth. It felt stable. It didn't feel like it was slip sliding around. And it made the adjustment from going from cane to synthetic quite seamless. Number two, in terms of flexibility, playability, response, the ability to manipulate tone, articulation, all those kind of subtleties, this reed does remarkably well. It's remarkably responsive. I was very impressed, and it's actually a joy to play in that respect. Now for the things that I didn't like quite as much. The number one thing, unfortunately, as much fun as this reed is to play, as responsive it is, and all of that, unfortunately the tone isn't great. And don't get me wrong, it's not terrible, but it does sound like a piece of plastic. It is bright and it is shrill. So that might not be a bad thing. If you're the type of saxophone player who likes to sound like laser beams are shooting out your bell, you don't mind going and playing outside and having birds falling from the sky dead at your feet, then great, this might be the reed for you. But if you're a player more like me who likes a darker, more traditional sound with shimmer and overtone to it, I'm not saying you can't achieve that with this reed, but it's difficult. You have to work very hard. And I found myself working really, really hard to get the sound that was kind of at least middle of the road acceptable for me using this reed. Two, longevity. One of the main reasons people play these synthetic reeds is because they're supposed to last a long time. Now this reed gave me almost exactly 40 hours of playing time, which for a single reed is not bad at all. It's actually quite exceptional. The thing is these reeds, one of these reeds costs the same pretty much as a box of 5 cane reeds. And in a box of 5 cane reeds, I usually get 2 that play great right out of the box, if I'm lucky 3, but I can make them all work if I'm willing to spend a little time working on them. So whether I'm getting 2 good reeds out of a box of cane or 5 good reeds, either way, it's lasting a lot longer than 40 hours. So for me, there's no real value in these reeds. They're really expensive. As you may have guessed, no, I did not make the switch to synthetic reeds, but I was extremely impressed, especially with the company that makes the clear plastic reed, because they played really, really well. I really tried hard. I wanted to make the switch to them, but what it came down to was that in order to get a sound that I found to be acceptable, I had to work way too hard to get it. And then you couple that with the fact that I wasn't actually saving any money with those reeds, well, I decided to stick with cane. Even though I've decided to stick with the traditional cane reed, I'm still very much in love with the idea of these synthetic reeds because they're brilliant. You take it out of the package and they're consistent. Each one plays exactly the same. They're not susceptible to humidity or atmospheric pressure or altitude, anything like that. And the playability and flexibility of the reeds have really come so far. It's impressive. So I wanted to share with you the key takeaways, some of the key things that I learned throughout this experiment that I think everyone should keep in mind if you decide you're going to play synthetic reeds. Number 1, strength is of utmost importance. So with a synthetic reed, remember, you can't break it in. There's no break-in period. You can't modify it. You can't work on it. You can't sand it. You can't do anything like that. So what you get out of the box is what you're stuck with. So it's very important to dial it in. And one thing I appreciated about the Clear company that I tried is they offer their reeds in quarter strength sizes. The other company didn't. And in fact, in that company, I really couldn't find one that was the ideal strength for me. So it's really important that you dial it in. And there's one thing I noticed about playing that I had never really noticed before, is that with cane reeds, On tenor sax, I like a very stiff reed, but there are some ranges of the horn or some specific situations where I want that reed to be a little more forgiving, a little bit less stiff. And I notice that there are certain adjustments I do with my embouchure that allow for that flexibility. Whereas with the synthetic reed, you don't have it. So it's really, really important you dial in the actual strength that is best suited for you to work with. Number 2, longevity is an issue, and I always thought that these reeds lasted a long time, but by playing a synthetic reed, in no way, shape, or form are you saving any money. And you know, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, we talked about it. All these reeds are very consistent. They're not susceptible to humidity, etc. So you may be more than happy to pay a premium for, you know, one less headache. But so long as you're aware of that going in. One of these reeds costs about the same as a box of traditional reeds, and it will not last as long. Number 3, something else that I was surprised about is that when a synthetic reed decides to crap out, it does so almost instantly, right? Unlike a traditional reed where you can see that it's sort of coming to the end of its life cycle, the synthetic reed, it just stops. So for that reason, it's always a good idea to have maybe 1 or 2 other reeds on hand as extras. 4, they don't sound anything like cane reeds, even the best of them, right? I can easily tell if someone's playing a synthetic reed over a cane reed. Now, I don't necessarily think this is a bad thing because at the end of the day, sound is completely subjective and we're all after our own individual voice, so to speak. So this might be the tool to help you get that individual thing that you're looking for. But if you're a player who appreciates a more traditional sound, it takes a lot more effort to get one of these synthetic reeds to sort of approximate that. In conclusion, for those of you who have been following my channel for a long time, you know I'm not a fan of all this sax gear. I think it's a terrible idea to be switching equipment all the time, and I can't stand all the attention the videos made given to gear comparisons and all the newest thing on the market. I think it's all ridiculous because at the end of the day, it is us who are responsible for our own sounds. But that being said, gear is important because it needs to work for you and not get in your way. So you do need to have a quality horn, you need a quality mouthpiece, and you need a quality reed. You need those 3 things at minimum, and you don't want to be working against any one of those things. So even though synthetic reeds are not for me, they may be perfect for you. And if it is, then that's great. Please stick with it because then you have one less thing to worry about and you can spend more time focusing on what's truly important. Practice. I'm the Saxophone Oracle. Thank you so much for continuing to watch and follow this channel. I love to hear from you. Any comments or questions, drop them below. Send me an email. Please consider subscribing if you haven't already. Send me a thumbs up. Share this with your friends. All these little things help this channel grow and make it more available for others to find on YouTube. I wish you a great week. Happy practicing. See you on Tuesday.